The harsh Maryland July sun beat down on the smooth asphalt of Oak Creek Estates, transforming the normally quiet upscale neighborhood into a picture of sultry stillness. The air was thick, broken only by the distant hum of a lawnmower or the chirping of birds hiding in the shade of ancient oaks. Dr. Lena Morgan stood on the stone driveway of her modern two-story home, squinting against the bright light. She had just signed for a package that had just arrived. Next to her, a few pots of bougainvillea were blooming brightly, seemingly unaffected by the heat. But the afternoon peace was shattered. Parked at the curb in front of her house was a Metropolitan Police Department patrol car, its roof lights off, but its presence noticeable enough in a neighborhood where police were rare. Leaning against the car door was Officer Vince Russo, his face red and his eyes filled with an annoyed smugness. He was looking at Lena, a leering, scrutinizing look. "Come on, pretty doctor," Russo said, his voice slick and sarcastic. He had just made a disgusting offer. "It's just a little goodwill, $300 a month. A small sum to keep this lovely neighborhood safe for people. Like you." He paused, glancing her up and down. "Or you know," he smiled, a smile that made Lena feel sick. "There are other payments I can accept. It's quiet in the middle of the day. I don't think your husband is home, is he?" Lena's heart pounded in her chest. She felt the blood rush to her face, both from anger and fear. She tried to keep her voice from shaking. "What the hell are you talking about?" she asked, her voice sharp. "This is my house. I won't give you a cent, and I swear I'll report you for this disgusting behavior. You're a disgrace to the uniform you wear." Russo's smile faded, replaced by an angry frown. His face was even redder in the sun. "Report?" he growled, stepping onto the sidewalk, taking a step toward Lena, brazenly invading her personal space. "Who do you think you are to threaten me? A nigger living in a White House thinks she has power?" The vicious racial slurs came without hesitation. "I'm the law here. You do what I tell you to do." Lena stepped back reflexively, her hand tightening on the cell phone she held. She wanted to call 911, to call Marcus, her husband, but fear froze her fingers. The ferocity in Russo's eyes sent a chill down her spine. Seeing Lena back away and look scared, Russo became even bolder. He thought he had the upper hand. To completely silence her resistance, he did something unthinkable in broad daylight. He suddenly pulled a black Glock pistol from the holster at his hip. The sunlight glinted off the cold metal. He didn't point the gun directly at Lena, but the way he held it, the barrel tilted down but his finger resting on the trigger, his eyes staring at her menacingly, was more terrifying than a curse. "What now, bitch?" Russo growled, his voice filled with naked menace. "Do you still want to report? Or do you want to cooperate more happily in the middle of the day like this?" Lena stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat. A gun, right in front of her house, in broad daylight, by a police officer. Absolute terror washed over her, a numbing sense of helplessness and isolation under the scorching sun. What the hell is going on? Why would he do that? In broad daylight? Had anyone seen? Would anyone help her? She glanced quickly at the street, but it was still eerily quiet. She was completely alone, facing a law enforcement officer who acted like a dangerous thug. Dr. Lena Morgan has worked hard for the past 15 years to get to where she is today. As a renowned pediatrician at City Center Hospital, she has not only faced the constant pressures of the medical profession, but also had to overcome countless invisible barriers, implicit biases of race and gender, in a field where top positions are still held by white men. She is intelligent, persistent, and has a deep empathy for her patients, which has helped her build credibility and respect among professionals as well as parents. 2 years ago, after years of hard work and saving, she and her husband, Marcus, finally realized their dream, buying a house in Oak Creek Estates. The neighborhood is known for its spacious homes, beautiful architecture, manicured lawns, and quiet, safe atmosphere. It was a symbol of success, of the fruits of their labor that they deserved. The two-story house with a stone and brick facade and a small front garden was Lena's pride. But life in Oak Creek wasn't all rosy. As one of the few black families in a predominantly white, affluent neighborhood, Lena sometimes felt curious, judgmental glances, and sometimes even cold distance from some neighbors. The greetings sometimes seemed forced, the smiles unfriendly. She knew that no matter how successful she was, No matter how beautiful her house was, in the eyes of some, she was still an outsider, someone who didn't belong here. She learned to ignore those things, focusing on her work and family, but a vague sense of insecurity always existed somewhere under the surface. That fateful Wednesday afternoon, Lena was scheduled to work from home, consulting with patients via telemedicine. Having just finished her work, she went out onto the porch to pick up a package of vitamins for her son and water some potted bougainvillea that were blooming in the sun. She was wearing a comfortable cotton shirt, her hair loose, and slippers, a completely normal image of a woman enjoying some fresh air at home during her lunch break. That's where Officer Vince Russo comes in. Russo has been a patrolman for nearly 20 years, but his career has stalled. He's been stuck in a patrol position, watching younger colleagues advance, while he becomes increasingly bitter and dissatisfied. He takes his frustration out on his job, especially on those he considers lesser or those he envies. He has a deep prejudice against people of color and immigrants, believing they're taking what should belong to native whites like him. He also despises women, especially independent, successful women. Internal police department records show that Russo was repeatedly complained about by citizens for rudeness, offensive language, and discriminatory behavior during traffic stops and security checks. However, the incidents often lacked concrete evidence or were deemed not serious enough to warrant more severe discipline than a verbal reprimand or a perfunctory request to attend anger management classes. He was adept at circumventing the law and exploiting people's reluctance to confront the police. Patrolling the wealthy Oak Creek area only added to Russo's discomfort. He looked at the big houses and fancy cars and felt a deep sense of injustice. Why did these people have it all while he had to work hard and still struggle? Especially when he saw the minorities living in those houses, his envy turned to open hatred. He had noticed Dr. Lena Morgan a few times before, her BMW X5 parked in the garage, her elegant clothes, her self-assured success. All of it was a thorn in his side. That afternoon, as Russo drove slowly down the tree-lined street in his patrol car, he saw Lena standing alone on the porch. A dark thought crossed his mind. Here was an opportunity. The neighborhood was deserted, and she was a black woman, surely afraid and easily subdued. He could have some fun or make some pocket money. He stopped the patrol car and got out, trying to look serious, but his eyes betrayed his evil intentions. He approached Lena, starting with a mock question about the security of the area. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Is everything okay? We're just doing a routine patrol." Lena, though a little surprised and wary, tried to be polite. "Yes, everything is fine, thank you, officer." But the conversation quickly took a different turn. Russo began making probing comments. "Home in the middle of the day? Nice? Must be no work." His tone was slightly sarcastic. "With such a big house, you must be doing well in business?" Then came more blatantly discriminatory questions. "Do you really live here? Or are you just a maid?" He asked this on purpose, knowing the answer, just to humiliate her. "What does your husband do to be so rich?" Lena began to feel uncomfortable and angry. She realized the evil intent behind these questions. "Officer," she said, her voice cold, "I don't think that has anything to do with your work. If there's nothing else, please let me in." Lena's tough attitude, instead of discouraging Russo, only provoked him further. He felt slighted. He decided it was time to show her who's boss around here. The real confrontation had only just begun. Lena's polite but firm refusal did not extinguish Russo's intentions, but on the contrary, it seemed to add fuel to the smoldering fire of pride and prejudice within him. He smirked, a cold smile that had no good intentions. "Oh, why are you in such a hurry to get inside, doctor?" he said, his tone turning openly mocking. "It's sunny out here, the air is fresh. Or are you afraid of something?" He took another step, closing the distance between them. "And I'm telling you, you're no pushover for someone like you to get into Oak Creek. You must have some kind of trick." His words were laced with contempt, implying that she had achieved her position not through ability, but through some shady means. Lena clenched her fist. "Mind your language, officer," she gritted out. "I demand that you leave my property immediately, or I will call 911. "Call 911? Russo chuckled, a dry, unpleasant laugh. Who are you calling? Calling my coworkers here? For what? To hear you make up stories about me harassing you? Who would believe a nigger like you? He used the racial slur in a blatant, unadulterated way. This blatant insult was too much for Lena to bear. You're a pervert! Get out of here! She screamed, her voice cracking with anger and fear. Lena's strong reaction made Russo even more furious. He was not used to being opposed by women, especially black women. He decided to teach her a lesson she would never forget. A perverse thought popped into his head. Oh, hot-tempered, he said, his voice turning sleazy, his eyes sweeping over Lena in a vulgar manner. But I like it. It must be boring being home alone in the hot sun, right? How about I come in and help you relax a bit? I know a lot of ways to make you happy. The vulgar and disgusting proposition was uttered in broad daylight. Get out! Lena screamed, taking a few more steps toward the door, her hands shaking as she tried to unlock her phone. You rotten cop! Pervert? Russo repeated, a cruel smile on his lips. Fine. If you don't like fun, then let's talk money. He crossed his arms, looking patronizing. Like I said, $300 a month. Cash. Give it to me and I'll make sure nothing bad happens to you or this beautiful house. Consider it a security fee. He saw Lena's horrified and furious expression, which amused him even more. You know, this area is rich, but also complicated. All sorts of things can happen. A petty theft, a flat tire, a neighbor complaining about noise. If you're reasonable, I can turn a blind eye for you. If not, he trailed off, but the menacing look in his eyes said it all. This is between you and me. No one needs to know. Lena was completely shocked. Demanding protection money? A police officer was demanding protection money from her right in front of her house? The depravity was unbelievable. You're scum, she said, her voice shaking with indignation. I will never give money to someone like you. I will report you. I will make sure you pay for this. She raised the phone, trying to dial. The threat of reporting was what Russo feared most. He knew that if he were investigated, his career would be over. He had gone too far, and there was no turning back. The fear of being exposed, the sheer rage and the wounded pride had pushed him to the brink of insanity. He had to shut her up, to make her so afraid that she wouldn't dare speak. In a reckless and foolish decision, Russo pulled the Glock from its holster. The action was quick, decisive. The black gun appeared in the bright sunlight, a deadly object in the peaceful scene. He didn't point it directly at Lena's head, but he held it firmly in his hand, the barrel pointing down at an angle that was enough for her to see clearly. His index finger rested lightly on the trigger. The gaze he gave Lena now had no trace of lust or greed, only coldness, cruelty, and an unspoken deadly threat. What now, bitch? Russo growled, his voice filled with naked menace. He took another step forward, closing the distance between them to just a few meters. Do you want to report back? Or do you want to have some fun, cooperation in the middle of the day? Lena felt as if the ground beneath her feet were falling away. Her heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it was going to burst out of her chest. Her breathing was rapid and shallow. She stared at the gun, then at Russo's lifeless eyes. A primal terror seized her. She truly believed he could shoot her right here, right in front of her house, in broad daylight. Time stood still. The only thing left was the pounding of her heart in her ears and the haunting sight of the gun before her eyes. She was helpless, cornered by a man who claimed to be the defender of the law. In the midst of the tense, breathless moment, when Lena was in the grip of absolute terror and Russo was reveling in the feeling of absolute power that the gun brought, a familiar sound cut through the heavy silence. The sound of a car engine was approaching on the asphalt. The sound grew louder, and then a shiny black Audi A6 sedan, her husband, Marcus's car, slowly turned into the driveway of the house. Marcus Morgan, a senior detective with the Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, the Internal Affairs Division of the Metropolitan Police Department, decided to go home for lunch on an unscheduled basis. He had just finished a stressful meeting earlier than expected and wanted to take advantage of the limited time he had at home before returning to headquarters for his afternoon interviews. He had not given Lena any advance notice. As soon as the car rolled into the driveway, Marcus realized something was terribly wrong. A patrol car parked right in front of his house at noon, and then the sight that greeted his eyes made his blood run cold. His wife, Lena, was standing on the steps, her face pale with fear, and a police officer, he recognized him as Vince Russo, a notorious troublemaker in the department, was standing very close to her. And most importantly, he had a gun in his hand. With years of experience investigating sensitive cases and training to react in dangerous situations, Marcus did not panic. His first instinct was to stay calm and assess the situation. He turned off the car but did not rush to open the door. Through the windshield, he observed Russo's position, the distance between him and Lena, the way he held the gun. Had he seen him? It seemed that Russo was so focused on threatening Lena that he did not notice the presence of the car. Marcus quietly reached for his cell phone, turned on the recording mode, and placed it in a discreet place on the dashboard. It only took him a few seconds to make a decision. He took a deep breath, opened the car door, and stepped out. He moved slowly, not making a loud sound, but each step exuded determination and a hidden power. He deliberately circled around to the front of the car so that Russo could see him clearly. "Good evening, officer," Marcus said, his voice deep and steady and clear in the afternoon silence. Despite the daytime, the customary greeting still came through. "Can you tell me what's going on here?" He didn't shout, he didn't sound aggressive, but there was a weight to his voice that made Russo jump back. Surprised and perhaps a little embarrassed, Russo fumbled with the gun, trying to clumsily holster it or at least hide it behind his back. He turned to face Marcus, squinting at the tall, well-dressed black man who had just stepped out of the luxury car. His expression was one of annoyance at being disturbed and perhaps a little concern. "This is a police incident," Russo said, trying to regain his authoritative tone, though his voice was shaking. "Please keep a safe distance. Who are you? This is none of your business." Marcus ignored Russo's warning. He didn't stop, but continued walking quickly toward his wife, who was standing frozen on the steps. He put his arm around Lena's shoulders, feeling her trembling. "Lena, are you okay?" he asked softly, looking deeply into her eyes, still wide with fear. When she nodded weakly, he was relieved. Marcus then turned around, facing Officer Russo directly. The distance between them was now only a few feet. Marcus's eyes were cold as steel, unwavering under the harsh sunlight. "I am the owner of this house," Marcus said, his voice even but commanding. And more importantly, he slowly reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a black leather wallet, and opened it with a snap, revealing a shiny metal badge and his Metropolitan Police Department identification card. "I am Detective Marcus Morgan, Bureau of Professional Responsibility, Metropolitan Police Department, number 714. He looked straight into Russo's eyes, which were beginning to widen with a shock and panic. "And Officer Russo," Marcus continued, his voice icy, "based on what I've just witnessed and what my wife will surely report, it sounds like this has been a very, very bad day for you." The name Marcus Morgan, the title Office of Professional Responsibility, the badge glinted in the midday sun. Those three elements were like three consecutive hammer blows to Vince Russo's already reeling mind. OPR, Internal Affairs, a name that sent shivers down the spine of every police officer, especially one with a guilty conscience like him. He knew what OPR was. It was a unit that investigated allegations of misconduct, corruption, and abuse of power by police officers themselves. They had near absolute power to conduct internal investigations, interrogate, search, and recommend the most severe forms of discipline, including dismissal and criminal prosecution. And the man standing before him, the husband of the woman he had just harassed, demanded money from, solicited sex from, and threatened at gunpoint, was a senior OPR detective. The horrible truth completely destroyed Russo's mind. All the color in his face disappeared, replaced by a white of horror. The arrogant, cruel, smug look from earlier vanished, as if it had never existed. His legs began to shake uncontrollably, his knees threatening to buckle on the hot pavement. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead and back, despite the scorching sun. Detective Morgan," Russo stuttered, his voice cracking, pathetically obsequious. You're going home for lunch? It's really you. I didn't know. I didn't know this was your house. He began waving his arms around meaninglessly, trying to find some kind of explanation, some kind of excuse. It's just a misunderstanding, detective, a complete misunderstanding. I swear. He took a step toward Marcus, but not in a threatening manner like before, but in a pleading manner. I was just doing my normal security patrol. Saw that the lady seemed a little nervous, so I stopped to ask. Yes, just asking. He tried to make up a plausible story, but his trembling voice and darting eyes betrayed the lie. The gun! He glanced at the holster at his waist as if it had betrayed him. I just took it out to double-check the safety. That's right, routine safety checks. It's the rules, I swear. Please believe me. Seeing Marcus still standing still, his cold eyes unchanged, Russo became even more panicked. He almost knelt down. Please, Detective Morgan. Don't destroy me. I have a wife, 2 small children. If this gets out, I will lose everything. My career, my family, everything will be ruined. Tears began to well up in the eyes of the man who had been so cruel just a moment ago. Can we talk privately? Somewhere more private. I will do anything you want, anything. His despicable attitude, begging for mercy, was despicable. Lena stood behind her husband, watching the entire transformation of Russo's disgust. Her initial fear was slowly replaced by contempt and anger. She said nothing, but the hand gripping Marcus's arm said it all. Marcus was unmoved by Russo's crocodile tears or pathetic pleas. He had seen too many of them in his time at OPR, people who abused their power ruthlessly when they thought they were safe, then turned to utter cowardice when faced with the prospect of punishment. He looked at Russo with a cold, professional disdain. Misunderstanding, Marcus repeated, his voice icy, cutting off Russo's pleas. You call harassing my wife in broad daylight, using racist language, demanding protection money, soliciting her, and pulling a gun on her a misunderstanding, Russo? He shook his head slowly. Do you think I'm blind, or do you think I'm an idiot? He didn't give Russo a chance to reply. It's too late for a private conversation, officer. Marcus emphasized the word officer with a distinct irony. He pulled his cell phone from his jacket pocket, the screen still lit. Stay where you are. Don't move an inch. I'm calling Chief Miller, and I'm going to request a supervisor to be on the scene immediately to take over. At the mention of Sheriff Miller's name, the last hope in Russo's eyes vanished. He knew it was truly over. He stood there, shivering in the midday sun, awaiting his inevitable fate. Marcus Morgan wasted no time. He dialed the familiar number on the screen. It was Chief David Miller's direct cell number. With his position at OPR, Marcus had the access and working relationship to communicate directly with the highest levels of command in urgent and dire situations like this. Chief, Marcus said into the phone, his voice calm and professional, but not without urgency. Detective Morgan here. I am at my residence on Oak Creek Drive. There has been a serious incident involving Officer Vince Russo, badge number 4815. He has just harassed, attempted extortion, and threatened my wife, Dr. Lena Morgan, at gunpoint in front of our home. I witnessed the end of the incident and have Russo on scene. I request that you and a supervisor arrive immediately. On the other end of the line, Chief Miller, a seasoned veteran of the department and concerned about its image, immediately realized the gravity of the situation. An officer being accused by an OPR detective of such horrific crimes, especially drawing a gun on a civilian. This was not just a routine disciplinary incident, but a bombshell that could destroy the reputation of the entire department if not handled quickly and properly. Understood, Detective Morgan. Chief Miller's voice came over the phone, serious and determined. Keep the scene. Lieutenant Donovan and I will be there shortly. Don't let Russo leave. In less than 15 minutes, a rapid response time that reflected the priority of the case. 2 police cars, one with a command badge, were on the scene in the distance, sirens blaring. Chief Miller, a tall man with gray hair and a neat uniform, stepped out of the command car, followed by Lieutenant Donovan, the area patrol leader. The scene before Chief Miller confirmed the seriousness of the call. Detective Marcus Morgan stood guard over his wife, who still looked shocked and frightened. A few feet away, Officer Vince Russo stood with his head bowed, his face pale, looking like a criminal awaiting judgment. A few curious neighbors had begun to peek out of their windows or stand at a distance. The appearance of several police cars and the highest command in the middle of the day had attracted no small amount of attention. Sheriff Miller approached Marcus and Lena. "Detective Morgan, Dr. Morgan," he greeted formally, his eyes showing concern and seriousness. "Please tell me what happened." Marcus, with a professional demeanor of an investigator, presented the entire incident objectively, clearly, and in detail, from the moment he arrived home and witnessed the scene, to Lena's initial statements about Russo's harassment, demands for money, and threats with a gun. He did not add personal emotions, focusing only on the facts and evidence. Lena, encouraged by her husband, also attempted to tell her side of the story. Her voice was still shaky, but she described the racist comments, the disgusting sexual advances, the blatant demands for protection money, and the terrifying moment when Russo pulled out a gun. Her testimony, while emotional, was coherent and believable. Chief Miller listened intently, his face growing more serious. He glanced at Russo, who stood motionless, not daring to look up. He didn't need to hear any more excuses from Russo. The testimony of a respected OPR detective and the victim was enough to tell him what had happened. Russo's actions were not only a serious breach of discipline, but also a crime, a betrayal of the public trust, and a tarnishing of the entire force. He knew he had to act quickly and decisively. "Lieutenant Donovan," Chief Miller ordered, his voice firm, "disarm Officer Russo, his badge, and his radio immediately." Donovan, who was also shocked and disappointed by his subordinate's behavior, quickly stepped forward and carried out the order. Russo did not resist, shaking as he handed over everything. "Officer Russo," Chief Miller said, his voice uncompromising, "you are hereby suspended indefinitely, effective immediately. Lieutenant Donovan and another officer will escort you to headquarters. You are not to contact or speak to anyone about this incident until you receive further orders from the Office of Professional Responsibility. Is that clear?" Russo just nodded, speechless. The two police officers escorted him into the patrol car and quickly left the scene, leaving behind a tense silence. Chief Miller turned back to Lena and Marcus, his demeanor becoming more sincere. "Dr. Morgan, Detective Morgan," he said, "again, I am deeply sorry for what you had to go through today. Officer Russo's behavior was completely unacceptable and goes against every core value of our department. I assure you that the Office of Professional Responsibility will conduct a thorough, transparent, and thorough investigation. The offender will face the most severe consequences, both disciplinary and legal." He provided his direct contact information and that of the OPR investigator who would handle the case, and offered to provide psychological support to Dr. Morgan if needed. The system had begun to intervene, and the wheels of justice, though sometimes sluggish, had begun to move. The internal investigation by the Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, was swift and extremely serious. An independent investigation team, without the direct involvement of Marcus Morgan to ensure objectivity, was formed the same day. They worked with a sense of urgency, aware of the pressure from superiors and public interest. The detailed and consistent testimony of Dr. Lena Morgan and Detective Marcus Morgan was a solid foundation for the investigation. Lena described the entire process of harassment, threats, and attempted extortion in detail, providing specific details about Russo's words and actions. Marcus provided testimony about what he witnessed, including Russo's actions of pulling out a gun and his panicked, pleading demeanor after his identity was revealed. The timely recording that Marcus made on his phone, although it may not have captured the entire incident, did capture some of Russo's pleading and indirect confessions, becoming an important additional piece of evidence. OPR investigators also gathered other evidence. Data from Russo's patrol car's GPS and radio system was extracted, confirming the exact time and location of his stop in front of Morgan's home, as well as the absence of any radio calls reporting an unusual incident at that address around the time of the incident. indicating that he acted spontaneously and without any justification. Vince Russo's past employment and disciplinary records were re-examined and scrutinized. Old complaints of rudeness and discrimination, once dismissed as trivial, were now viewed in a completely different light, revealing a pattern of repeated and escalating misconduct. When confronted by OPR investigators, Vince Russo initially tried to deny his guilt, repeating the story of a misunderstanding and a security check. However, when confronted with the testimony of Lena and Marcus, the GPS data, and especially the audio recording, he gradually lost his reason. Finally, under the pressure of interrogation and undeniable evidence, he was forced to admit to some of his wrongdoing, although he still tried to downplay the severity. After a short investigation, OPR had enough evidence to reach a final conclusion. Officer Vince Russo had violated a series of the most serious regulations of the city police department, including abuse of power, racial discrimination and sexual harassment, attempted extortion, illegal use of force and threats with weapons, seriously damaging the reputation of the department. Based on the OPR report and recommendation, it didn't take long for Chief Miller and the department's disciplinary board to make their final administrative decision. Vince Russo was permanently dismissed from the police force, losing all benefits and privileges. His nearly 20-year career ended in disgrace. But the story doesn't end there. The criminal nature of the case is clear. The district attorney's office, after reviewing the investigative file turned over by OPR, decided to file criminal charges against Vince Russo. He was charged with a number of serious crimes, including aggravated menacing, or its state equivalent, which involves the use of a firearm to threaten, attempted extortion, abuse of authority, and a civil rights violation charge. Vince Russo's trial attracted some attention in the legal community, although it was kept low profile to avoid damaging the reputation of the police department. In court, Dr. Lena Morgan once again faced the man who had caused her horror. Despite the difficulty, she bravely took the witness stand, recounting the entire story clearly and emotionally, while maintaining the necessary composure. Her testimony made a strong and convincing impression on the jury. Detective Marcus Morgan also gave expert testimony, further corroborating the details of the case. Russo's defense attorney tried his best to paint a different picture, suggesting that Russo had acted rashly due to work pressure, that Lena had misunderstood his intentions, or even attempted to attack Marcus's reputation as a colleague in the industry. However, these efforts were rendered futile by the victim's consistent testimony, the objective evidence, and Russo's own despicable behavior when caught red-handed. After deliberating, the jury quickly returned a verdict. Vince Russo was guilty on all major counts. The sentencing hearing took place a few weeks later. The judge, known for his sternness, read the verdict in a solemn courtroom. He highlighted Russo's blatant betrayal of his oath to serve and protect the public, the dangers of allowing toxic prejudice and corruption to persist in law enforcement. He spoke of the fear and trauma Russo had caused Dr. Morgan, an upstanding citizen, in her own home. Considering the seriousness of the crimes, especially the use of weapons to threaten and attempt to extort money, along with the blatant abuse of power, the judge imposed an appropriate sentence to demonstrate the strictness of the law and send a strong deterrent message. Vince Russo was sentenced to 7 years in prison. The hammer of justice has finally sounded, closing the dark chapter in the life of the abuser of power and bringing some peace to the victim. 7 years in prison is a heavy enough sentence for Vince Russo to pay dearly for his crimes. He lost everything: his freedom, his career, his reputation, and perhaps his family. He became a textbook example of corruption, a bitter reminder of the consequences of abusing power and letting toxic prejudices dictate behavior. For Dr. Lena Morgan, the terrifying experience of that fateful afternoon left a deep psychological scar. The threat to her life right outside her own door, in broad daylight, by the very person who was supposed to protect her, shattered the sense of security she once had. She became more alert, sometimes startled by strange noises, and the image of a gun black in the sunlight still haunts her restless sleep. The feeling of insecurity, that she could be targeted simply because of her skin color and gender, permeated her daily life. However, Lena did not let her fear defeat her. The incident, although painful, also made her stronger. It motivated her to speak out more against the injustice and discrimination that she and many others faced on a daily basis. She was able to become more involved in community activities, sharing her story to raise awareness and promote change. Marcus's unwavering support and love were an important pillar to help her through this difficult time. Their relationship became even closer and deeper after the incident. For Marcus Morgan, the incident was a painful reminder of the dark side of the profession he serves. It reinforced his determination to continue his work at OPR, to root out bad actors like Russo and build a more accountable police force. He knows that the fight against corruption and abuse is a long and arduous one. The Morgans decided to take extra security measures at their home, installing a more modern surveillance camera system and reinforcing their doors, to help them feel safe again, even though they knew that no system could completely protect them from those who harbored hatred and prejudice. The Vince Russo scandal also sent shockwaves through the city police department. Its credibility was severely damaged, especially as the incident exposed gaps in its previous oversight and disciplinary practices. Under pressure from the public and from within the department, Chief Miller was forced to implement more drastic reforms. Training programs on ethics, racial and gender bias, communication skills, and appropriate use of force were reviewed and strengthened. Oversight of patrol officers was tightened, and the handling of citizen complaints was required to be more transparent and efficient. The story exposes the stark and sad truth that racism, sexism, and abuse of power do not only exist in dark places or special circumstances, but can happen anywhere, anytime, even in broad daylight in the most civilized and safe neighborhoods. It shows the unimaginable danger when power falls into the wrong hands, and the devastation it can cause to the lives of innocent people. The story also underscores the vital role of internal oversight mechanisms like the OPR. The existence of such units, while not always perfect, is the last bulwark against corruption from within and ensures accountability for law enforcement. But a nagging question remains. If Lena's husband had not been an OPR detective with such power and influence, would justice have been served so swiftly and harshly? Would the testimony of a lone black woman have had enough weight to stand up against that of a white police officer, even if he had clearly committed a crime? That question reveals the sad reality of the inequalities that still exist in our justice system and underscores the need to build a system of justice that is truly fair to all, regardless of status, race, or gender. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this content, please click like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next meaningful stories, because tomorrow we will have another meaningful story for you.